Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount, and I hope everybody's doing well today. I'm getting ready to share some video and photos with you that I think are probably the most important video and photos that have come out in the last 2 to 3 weeks since the Charlie Kirk assassination. Just the other day, I released a video, Wednesday as a matter of fact, and it was titled, "Did Charlie Kirk's security team betray him?" If you are genuinely interested in the truth and you would like as much information as you possibly can have to come to a good conclusion, right? We got to have good information to make good conclusions. I highly suggest that you go watch that video. And as a matter of fact, this video right here is kind of a follow-up to that video. So please go watch that video. I'll put the link down in the description below, and that will give you a better context for what we're going to be talking about and showing you today as well. In that video, I talk about the proper protocols and the medical interventions that should have taken place behind that table by his security team. I show you what those look like, and I compare and contrast to what we actually see. I also highlight in that video the fact that only one person would actually be able to do hemorrhage control on Charlie Kirk at any one time. And I talk about some of the things being said. There should be blood everywhere. People would have blood all over them. I show you exactly what that should look like through a recreation. I show you what I look like doing wound packing, hemorrhage control, and how much blood I ended up having on me. All right, folks, I want you to actually look at what's going on here. You see, I got a little bit of blood on my pants. Yeah, I got some blood on my hands. This is, I hate this stuff, stains everything. Look, we got 2 liters of blood back here. So the thing that I highlight in that video is that I believe it's this guy right here that is doing the hemorrhage control. And if he is doing things right, if they're competent back there, he's gonna be the only one that has blood on him. Everybody else is just assisting him and everything else. Well, I posted that video Wednesday. It was actually removed by YouTube Wednesday evening. I had to re-edit the video and then I reposted it Thursday morning. And one of the other things I did was I posted it to X as well. Now, in response to that, I suddenly got all these brand new pictures and video that I had never seen before. And those new pictures and video corroborate everything that I say is likely happening behind that table. So here's the footage that we have here. I'll pause it right here. This is the guy that I said I believed was doing hemorrhage control on Charlie Kirk. Even as he's standing by that UTV, you can see that his hands actually do have blood on them. Here we have another guy that was helping carry Charlie. We can see that he has blood on his arm. And if we look, here's his head of security. If you look closely at his knee, we can see that there's some blood transfer on his knee as well. Now we're going back to the guy that I said was doing the hemorrhage control. All right, this is the guy that if there's gonna be blood on somebody, it's gonna be on him. Now understand, we could not see what was going on behind that table. We couldn't see his hands. We also have really bad footage throughout this. This is by far the best footage that I've seen documenting this event. So here's some other footage, same exact guy. We see blood on his left hand, we see blood on his right hand, we see blood on his pants, his right forearm, his bicep, his left bicep. And here we can see we have a significant amount of blood on his left pant leg as well. So there's 2 narratives here that are just objectively wrong. One is the idea that there's gonna be blood everywhere. That's incorrect. If you're doing proper hemorrhage control, you're not gonna see blood everywhere. And number 2, the other one I keep hearing is no one has any blood on them. That's also obviously incorrect. This is exactly the amount of blood that I would expect to see. The guy doing hemorrhage control, doing the wound packing, he's gonna have blood on his hands. He's gonna be down there on his knees. He might even have had Charlie's head in his lap while he's doing the wound packing. You know, the idea that there's gonna be blood everywhere is just nonsense. As a matter of fact, in that other video, I show you in a real world treatment of a carotid artery that was severed, their wound packing, you'd be shocked at how little blood there is. And as a matter of fact, as soon as Charlie fell down, within a second of getting to Charlie, somebody should have had their fingers in that wound, compressing those vessels, and that would stop the blood immediately. Now it's just a matter of getting some wound packing material in there, most likely some hemostatic gauze, get in there and more permanently compress those vessels. And that would be followed up by a pressure dressing that would secure that wound pack so that they can transport him and it be secure as they transport him to the vehicle and ultimately to the hospital. But literally everything that I would expect to see using those protocols, we do see. We do see that there's blood back there. We do see blood on the clothing, and we see the guy that was actually doing the hemorrhage control, he clearly has a significant amount of blood on his hands. And of course, he tried to wipe that off. You know, one of the things that we do is we teach tactical medicine. And what we tell our students is you got to wipe that blood off. And usually we're actually using the casualty's clothes to wipe that blood off as soon as possible. Not only is blood a problem when it comes to pathogens, The main problem in these types of situations is that blood on your hands is slippery. You can't do things effectively with blood all over your hands. Anytime or as often as possible, you can wipe your hands and get rid of that blood so that you can get a good grip on equipment. You can actually effectively move the patient and your hands aren't slipping all over the place. So this is exactly what I would expect to see. And if there was blood all over the place, that means hemorrhage control wasn't done properly. And I go into a much more detailed version of that in the other video, so please go watch that just for your own objective information to where you can reassess or reevaluate what you believe was taking place in there. All right, so the rest of this video, I've tried to film 2 other times, and it just I never felt like I got it right, and I'm trying a different approach here. Because I realize there's a lot of people out there that are convinced that the security team was in on it, and that is based on interpretations of what they're doing. And quite frankly, I believe that it's really bad interpretations, and it's interpretations based on just incorrect information. And I'll cover all that. Now, one of the things that I used to do is I used to train people that are involved in personal security details. Exactly what we're seeing here, but these were at a much higher level. They were, protecting dignitaries, heads of state, diplomats, those type of things. So obviously with that background and that information, I am going to interpret things differently than most people out there. Now, being completely honest with you, everything in me wants to get up here and try to convince you that the security team wasn't in on it. And that is me basing my interpretation of events based on my experience, knowledge, and seeing what they're doing, whether they're doing things right, whether they're doing things wrong. Now, with that being said, if I'm being completely objective, I would agree with anyone that says, Gary, you don't know if they were in on it. Okay, you're right. I don't know if they were in on it. I don't know if they're guilty of anything. But based on what we know, I feel pretty strongly about that. And I also have a real problem with people, especially based on bad information, being tried and convicted in the court of public opinion. Like, that's generally frowned upon, right? And I do hope that people understand what you're actually doing and the impacts or the gravity of what you're suggesting. If you're incorrect, if these guys aren't in on it and you're saying that they are and they're basically guilty of murder, I just want you to think about the impacts that that would have on them and that would have on their family, all right? Now from here, what I want to do is just give you objective information. I don't want to try to convince you of anything. I don't want to try to sway your opinion. I'm going to give you objective information, and from that new information, all I would ask is that you be reasonable and take another look at your assessment of the situation, apply that information, and you determine on your own. Do you still think that the security team is involved or not? And then at least at the end of this, regardless of what you conclude, you're making those conclusions based on a more complete data set. That's really what this comes down to. So I just want to go through and directly address some of the things that have been said as far as perceived failures of the security team. So the first one is they should have been scanning the rooftops and looking for snipers, especially given what we saw in Butler, Pennsylvania. Folks, as far as I can tell, it looks like that this entire PSD personal security detail, they're basically bodyguards, right? Consists of about 6 people. It's a little bit hard to put a finalized number on that, but that sounds right to me, right? 6 people to protect Charlie. So first of all, when we talk about the principles of personal security details, their job is not to look at far threats. Now, if they happen to look up and they see those things, fine, they can address those, but they are not equipped or capable of doing effective counter surveillance. It's just not. You don't have enough people. And it's just, chances are they're not even trained in it. But the fact is, doing personal security, if your attention in a huge crowd of thousands of people, number one, the most likely threat, which is why these are set up the way that they are those near threats. People trying to get to Charlie, people pulling out handguns, all those things. Your job is to keep those people away and to identify those threats that are right there essentially in front of you, near threats. That's all they're equipped for. That's all they can do. Chances are that's all they're trained to do. If they're constantly looking from far to near, their attention is taken away from their primary role. If you're gonna do counter sniper security work, you gotta have people that are dedicated to that. And all of you out there might be saying, well, they should have had people out there doing that. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but who makes those determinations? Now there's rumors, and I don't know if they're true or not, that it was Charlie Kirk himself that owned the security company that managed these guys. Whoever was in charge determined that a far threat, a sniper, and I hate to even use that term, but a far threat was not something that they were going to spend the time and money and resources to mitigate. And that's just a fact, and we can see that. And quite frankly, that's what we see throughout all celebrities, right? I mean, Taylor Swift is a billionaire, and when she goes out and about, she goes out with a 4 to 6 man bodyguard team that's doing personal security detail work, and anytime that she's out and about walking somebody from a window, from a rooftop, or whatever else, and with the billions of dollars that she has, there's nothing that indicates to me that she has done anything to address a mid to long range threat. But definitely not in an open air event like what we saw Charlie doing. And Charlie was definitely assuming more risk than most celebrities out there. There's no doubt about it. But even Taylor Swift, there's nothing I've ever seen that would indicate that there is a counter sniper threat protocols in place to reduce that threat from a far shot. So we have to take that into consideration. Maybe there should be, and I do think that security going forward is going to change. Also, again, people are talking about there should have been drones up. I agree. That's not standard operating procedure in the security world. I also think that's going to change. So this security team did not have the personnel, and it was not equipped to address those far threats. It's just a fact. What they are trained to do, if there is a threat toward the protectee, they're going to jump on him, grab him, get him to the ground, put their bodies on top of him, protect him from any possible threats until they can figure out where the threat is coming from. And then if they need to move the protectee and or address those threats, if they're close enough, that's what they will do. One of the other criticisms that I've heard is, why didn't they have their guns out, looking for threats? Folks, especially in a crowded environment like that, you do not get a gun out until you have positively identified a threat. They are not law enforcement. They do not have the immunity and the protections that law enforcement has. And even law enforcement probably shouldn't have a gun out in a crowded area until they've identified a specific threat that they know they can engage. On top of that, as a security team member, you know that you need your hands free to be able to move that protectee, because that's the primary goal here. And or if there is medical aid that needs to be rendered, you got to have your hands free to do that. And the other thing that you have to consider, and these guys are trained to consider when you're doing this type of work, is even if you have a near threat, 25 yards away, the last thing you want to do too is actually shoot them, kill them, but then those rounds could possibly go through and ultimately hit people behind them as well. So there's a lot of things to consider based on what I see in the capabilities and the resources that they were given, that is not determined by them. It's determined by whoever's hiring them. Based on that, I think they did everything they could possibly do, and I don't see any major after-action review points. Expecting that team to be able to protect Charlie from a long-range threat, it's just not reasonable. That team was neither tasked nor organized to be able to do that effectively. And that's just an unfortunate fact. It really is. And hopefully this will be looked at as a lessons learned going forward for, personal security details. And they completely change what the standards are. Same thing with, drone coverage. Those should be no-brainers at this point. I agree with everybody that are outraged that those didn't exist, but it's just not how the industry has worked for a really long time. One of the other criticisms that I keep hearing that I kind of addressed in the other video, but I'll address it more specifically, is those guys were not doing CPR back there. They should not be doing CPR back there. That is not the correct medical procedure, protocol, and intervention when we have a massive hemorrhaging event. All right, why would you continue to manually pump the heart when all the heart's doing is pumping the fluid that is circulating all the oxygen, all the things that you need to stay alive? You're just pumping it out of the body. You have to stop massive hemorrhaging first, and then we need to move them, all right? And then we start doing CPR, which is exactly what they did from all the accounts that we've heard from Frank Turek and many others. They were doing CPR in the vehicle. That is the correct protocol. Whether you realize it or not, they should have not been doing CPR. The only thing they should have been focused on is hemorrhage control, and then securing that hemorrhage control so that they can move them without losing control of the hemorrhaging, which I show you how that's going to be done and explain some other things in another video as well. The other myth or misinformation, misconception, whatever you want to call it, that keeps coming up, that I can only conclude that this is intentional, given how easy it is to figure this out. I verified whether this was correct or not within 2 minutes. And that is, they didn't even take him to the closest hospital. Folks, that is a lie. And you can go figure this out on your own. You have the capabilities of Google Earth, Google Map, and many other mapping resources out there and applications. Don't take my word for it. Go figure this out for yourself. So the hospital they ended up taking him to was Timpanogos Regional Hospital. From exactly where they were to that hospital, not including traffic or anything else, I don't know if that was part of the calculus, but it is 7 minutes. All right, that is a level 3 trauma facility. The other hospital that they could have taken him to was Intermountain Health Utah Valley Hospital, and that is 11 minutes away. That is 4 minutes longer. That is a lifetime. Now, what I will say is that that one is a level 2 trauma center, so it might have been considered, but without a doubt, they took him to the absolute nearest hospital, which was Timpanogos Regional Hospital. It was 7 minutes away from that event where they were parked. Don't take my word for it. Go figure it out yourself. And look, I don't know what the motivations or the reasons people are putting out these manufactured or are proof of these manufactured narratives, because it is definitely happening. And I don't know if that's just because they're capitalizing on the fact that, you know, people are drawn to sensationalism and to some of the most outlandish theories and whatever else is going on there. I don't know if it's intentional to muddy the waters. I don't know what the force is behind this, but what we are gonna do here, regardless, is if we find deception taking place, we're gonna show it to you. I don't care if it comes from the government. I don't care if it comes from the internet grifters out there. We're gonna bring you the truth as we see it. And that's just what we're gonna do. I don't know what else to say. Now, I know me defending the security team, we're gonna go through all the ad hominems again. You're a Fed, Israel, blah. Look, folks, time and time again, I don't know what to tell you. I am self-employed. The only person that pays me is me. I will not be bought. I don't care about, I'm happy, man. I don't care if I make another dollar, but what you are not gonna get me to do is to say something that I don't believe, and you don't have to like it, and I'm not gonna be captured by an audience. So I'm gonna tell you what I believe to be true at the time. If that changes, I will come back and set the record straight. But what you're hearing from me are my own expressions, my thoughts, the way that I see things, and you can agree or disagree. And I don't care if there's 10 people watching this or 1 million. The story's gonna be the same, time and time again. All right, folks, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informative. If you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, make sure you hit that bell notification button. And on that bell notification button, tap it again, select all. Folks, we are getting heavily censored by YouTube especially. They have demonetized several of these videos and it makes no sense. And on top of that, they even pulled that one video, which again, should have met all the criteria for their terms and services and all that other stuff. But I'm used to it. I don't know what to say about that. So like, subscribe, all those things. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter. I put a lot of updated information out on Twitter, so make sure you go follow us there. I think that's a good source. There's other information about us and the other social media platforms you can find us on down in the description below, so go check that out. If you'd like to follow us there, we'd love it if you did. Folks, be discerning. That's what this is about. Look, I am 100% in agreement with people out there. There are elements of the government that have lied to us, that continue to lie to us, that continue to deceive us. But the fact is, there's many other elements out there trying to do the same thing for many different reasons. So be discerning. And until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.